The message from Captain Taman reached Earth 13 days after the Seongnyeom had gone dark. The United Defense Council had written off the ship as lost, probably destroyed in some accident beyond the colonies. Then the transmission arrived and everything changed. Admiral Bora watched the footage in silence. Images of the Corvus beautiful and terrified. Videos of Voran atrocities, bodies floating in space, cities burning, and humans, 200 humans, standing against an empire that had conquered 17 worlds. "Play the captain's statement again," she ordered. Taman's face filled the screen, exhausted but determined. "We found other life in the universe and they need us. The Voran Dominion is exterminating the Corvus species. We cannot stand by and let this happen. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but we're buying time. If Earth believes in anything, if humanity stands for anything, please send help. These people deserve to live." The council chamber erupted in argument. Some called Taman a mutineer, who had started an interstellar war without authorization. Others called him a hero who embodied humanity's best values. The debate raged for 3 hours before Admiral Bora stood and silenced them all. "Enough," she said coldly. "A human ship is under attack. Our people are dying to protect innocence. We can argue about politics later. Right now we mobilize." Ambassador Doyen, Earth's senior diplomat, nodded slowly. "This will unite the planet. Every nation has wanted a reason to put aside old grudges. Captain Taman just gave us one. He was right. Within 24 hours, every major nation on Earth had pledged ships and personnel. Old enemies worked together, pooling resources in ways that should have been impossible. The Mars colonies contributed their heavy cruisers. The Europa stations sent their best engineers. Even the isolated lunar settlements opened their weapons stockpiles. In 2 weeks, a fleet of 50 warships assembled in Earth orbit. It was the largest military force humanity had ever gathered, and it had a single purpose: save the Seongnyeom and protect the Corvus. Admiral Bora stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable and addressed the fleet. "We're going to war, not because we want to, but because someone asked for help and we answered. Remember that. We're not conquerors. We're defenders. Now let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when we're fighting for something that matters." The fleet jumped toward the Corvus system, carrying humanity's hopes and 20,000 soldiers. Back in the Corvus system, Captain Taman was running out of time. The Seongnyeom had evacuated 400,000 Corvus to hidden moons and asteroid bases, but millions more remained on the planet. The Voran were getting smarter, adapting to human tactics. War Master Drivok had called in reinforcements. "Captain, I'm reading 8 Voran destroyers jumping into the system," Commander Jiwon reported. "We can't fight that many." "We don't have to fight them," Taman said. "We just have to make them fight us. Keep their attention away from the evacuation sites." Dr. Hana had spent weeks studying Voran culture and psychology. She had learned something important. The Voran respected strength above all else. They understood individual combat, personal honor, the idea of proving yourself through direct conflict. "Captain," she said carefully, "War Master Drivok has been trying to contact you. He wants to issue a challenge." "What kind of challenge?" "Single combat. Voran tradition. If you lose, we have to leave the system. If you win, his forces withdraw." Jiwon shook her head immediately. "It's a trap. They won't honor any deal." "Maybe not," Taman said, "but it will buy us time. And time is what we need." The challenge was accepted. War Master Drivok's ship landed in the ruins of a Corvus city, and Taemin took a shuttle down with Jiwon and Lieutenant Kyung. He had no intention of fighting alone. Humans did not do honor duels. Humans worked as packs. Drivok waited in a plaza that had once been a market. The Voran War Master was massive, twice the size of any human, covered in scales like natural armor. He carried a plasma blade that hummed with energy. "You are the human captain," Drivok said through a translator. "You are smaller than I expected." "We usually are," Taemin replied. He wore combat armor and carried a rifle and a blade. Jiwon and Kyung stood beside him, also armed. Drivok's eyes narrowed. "This is single combat. Why do you bring others?" "Because humans don't fight alone," Taemin said simply. "We hunt in packs. We survive in groups. Individual strength means nothing to us. It's what we do together that matters." For a moment, Drivok seemed confused. Then he laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Very well. I will face all 3 of you." It changes nothing. The fight began. Drivok was faster than any creature that size should be, and his blade could cut through steel. He charged at Taemin with the confidence of someone who had never lost single combat. But Taemin rolled aside and Ji-won fired from the left, and Kyung threw a flashbang from the right. The Vorin had never fought opponents who coordinated without speaking, who anticipated each other's moves through pure instinct. Drivok swung his blade at Kyung, but the young pilot had already moved. He was trained to fly fighters at impossible speeds, making split-second decisions while pulling 10 Gs. Dodging a sword was easy. Taemin shot Drivok in the leg. The plasma round burned through scales but did not drop him. The War Master roared and backhanded Taemin, sending him flying into a wall. Human bones broke more easily than Vorin bones, but humans also kept fighting with broken bones. Ji-won was on Drivok before he could finish Taemin, her blade finding gaps in his scales. She had been an engineer before she became a soldier, and engineers understood weak points. Every structure had them. Even a Vorin War Master Kyung hit Drivok with a taser, enough voltage to drop a horse. It only slowed the War Master down, but slow was enough. The three humans moved like wolves around a bear, never giving him a chance to focus on one target. The fight lasted 4 minutes. It felt like hours. When it ended, Drivok was on his knees, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Taemin stood over him with a rifle aimed at his head. "Yield," Taemin said. Drivok stared up at the human, seeing him clearly for the first time. Small, yes. Weak individually, yes. But together, fighting as one mind in 3 bodies, they were something the Vorin had never faced. "You fight with honor," Drivok said quietly. "But not honor as we understand it. We fight to win," Taemin replied. "And to protect. Will you honor your word? Will you withdraw?" For a long moment, Drivok said nothing. Then he laughed again, though this time there was respect in it. "No. My word was given by a fool who did not understand what you were. The Vorin do not surrender to prey, but you are not prey, are you?" "No, we're not." "Then we will continue this war, and I will study you, learn from you, defeat you." Taemin lowered his rifle but did not put it away. "Fair enough. But know this, Earth is coming. 50 ships and 20,000 soldiers. This isn't just us anymore." Drivok's eyes widened. "You called for reinforcements?" "Of course we did. That's what humans do. We call for help when we need it, and we answer when others call." Before Drivok could respond, alarms echoed across every ship in the system. Jump signatures, dozens of them. The Earth fleet had arrived. Admiral Bora's voice broadcast on all frequencies. "This is the United Earth Defense Fleet. We are here to protect the Quarvis and enforce their sovereignty. All hostile forces have one chance to withdraw peacefully." Drivok pulled himself to his feet, ignoring his wounds. He looked at Taemin with something approaching respect. "Your people are insane. You come from a death world, fight like demons, and think you can challenge an empire that has existed for 10,000 years. "Probably," Taemin agreed. "But we're here anyway. I must report this to High Sovereign Krathis. He will want to know about you." Drivok limped toward his ship, then paused. "Human captain, you spared my life. Why?" "Because killing you would make you a martyr. Letting you live makes you a messenger. Tell your High Sovereign that Earth is here and we're not going away." Drivok boarded his ship and jumped out of the system. The remaining Vorin forces followed, retreating in the face of the Earth fleet. The Quarvis planet erupted in celebration. Elder Seelith broadcast a message that Dr. Hana translated with tears in her eyes. "The ones who answered have brought salvation. The Deathworlders have saved us, but Taemin knew the truth. This was not salvation. This was just the beginning of something much bigger. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same." The Vorin destroyer cut through space like a knife, confident and deadly. On its bridge, Captain Relvok studied the human vessel with contempt. The Seongnyeom was small, barely a tenth the mass of his ship. Its weapons were primitive, meant for clearing space debris, not military combat. This would be over quickly. "Target their engines," Relvok ordered. "We'll capture them alive. I want to see what these Deathworlders look like when they beg." The destroyer opened fire. Plasma beams lanced through the void, bright and terrible. But the Seongnyeom was not where those beams struck. The human ship twisted and dove, moving in ways that made no tactical sense. It should have maintained formation, presented its strongest shields, fired back in disciplined volleys. That was how space combat worked. The humans did not care how it was supposed to work. Kyung, status on Reaper Wing. Captain Taemin called out as his ship shook from a near miss. 6 fighters ready and angry, sir. Just give the word. G1, plot us a course through the ring system. Maximum burn. Commander G1's eyes widened. Captain, the rings are full of debris. We could hit something at this speed. So could they. But we're better at dodging. The Seongnyeom screamed toward the planet's rings, the Voron destroyer following close behind. Relvok watched the human ship dive into the ice and rock with disbelief. They were running into a debris field? That was suicide. Follow them, he ordered. They're trapped now. The destroyer entered the rings at full speed. Immediately, alarms began screaming. Chunks of ice the size of buildings tumbled through space in chaotic patterns. The destroyer's computers calculated trajectories and adjusted course, but there were too many variables. A house-sized rock slammed into the starboard shields, sending the entire ship shuddering. The Seongnyeom danced through the same debris like a bird in a forest. Human pilots did not need computers to tell them where to go. They saw the patterns, felt the rhythms, and reacted with instincts developed over millions of years of hunting and running. The destroyer had better sensors, stronger shields, more firepower. But the humans had something evolution had given them. The ability to make split-second decisions in chaos. Now Kyung. Hit them! Reaper Wing burst from the debris like predators from tall grass. The 6 fighters came at the destroyer from different angles, firing missiles and cannons. The Voron point defense tried to track them, but human pilots flew erratic patterns that made prediction impossible. One moment a fighter would be diving, the next climbing, the next spinning sideways in a maneuver that should have killed the pilot from the G-forces. Human bodies could take more punishment than the Voron realized. Reaper 2. Targeting their sensor array. Reaper 4, missiles away! Reaper lead, I'm going for the engine housing. Follow me in! Kyung led his wing straight at the destroyer's stern. So close that the bigger ship could not bring its main guns to bear. Human missiles, small and simple, struck the engine housing in precise locations. The destroyer's shields were meant to stop big weapons. These little missiles slipped through and exploded against the hull. The destroyer's engine sputtered and died. All ships reform on me, Kyung called. Let's give them one more pass, but Captain Taemin had other plans. Negative, Reaper lead, get clear. We're finishing this. The Seongnyeom emerged from the rings and fired its main cannon. The weapon was meant for breaking up asteroids. A mining tool-turned weapon. The beam struck the crippled destroyer's bridge and atmosphere exploded into space. On the destroyer, Captain Relvok felt his ship dying around him. This was impossible. They were the Voron, masters of war, conquerors of worlds. How could these small aliens defeat them? He activated the emergency beacon, sending everything his ship had learned about humans back to War Master Drivok. If the Voron were going to lose, they needed to understand what they were facing. The last thing Relvok saw was the human ship coming around for another pass, moving with a grace and ferocity that reminded him of the apex predators on his own homeworld, the kind of predators that Voron hunters had killed to prove their strength. Now the Voron were the prey. The destroyer exploded in silence, pieces tumbling through the rings like fallen stars. On the Seongnyeom's bridge, the crew erupted in cheers. They had done it. They had won an impossible fight against a superior enemy. But Taemin knew this was just the beginning. Stand down from combat stations, he ordered. Get me a casualty report. Medic Yoon's voice came over the comm. 4 injured, none critical. We got lucky, Captain. Today we did. But Jiwon, how many more Voron ships are in this system? Still reading 3 destroyers and multiple smaller craft. Sir, we can't fight them all. No, we can't, but we can make them think twice. Down on the planet's surface, Commander Jiwon was having the same thought. She had gathered intelligence from the Corvus survivors and formed a plan. There was a Voron ground base in the crystal forests of the northern continent. The base housed soldiers and equipment for processing captured Corvus. It was also where they kept their prisoners. I need volunteers, she told her security team. This is going to be ugly. Every hand went up. 12 humans loaded into the shuttle with weapons they barely knew how to use properly. They had trained for security work, crowd control, maybe defending against pirates. They had not trained to assault an alien military base, but neither had the Voron trained to defend against humans. The shuttle landed 5 kilometers from the base under cover of darkness. The Corvus planet rotated slowly, giving them a long night to work with. The team moved through the crystal forests in silence, their combat armor blending with the environment. Medic Yoon moved beside Jiwon, her rifle ready. "Commander, I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to save lives. You will," G1 said quietly. "Corvus lives and ours. Sometimes the best way to save people is to stop the things hurting them." They found the base at dawn. It was barely fortified, just prefabricated structures surrounded by a basic sensor net. The Vorin had never needed serious defenses before. Why would they? They only fought species that could not fight back. Jiwan studied the base through binoculars. Vorin soldiers patrolled the perimeter, huge reptilian creatures carrying plasma rifles. They moved in predictable patterns, confident and bored. "Remember," Jiwan whispered to her team, "fast and quiet. We get the prisoners out first. Fighting is secondary." But sometimes plans change. A Corvus child ran from one of the buildings, her colors flashing panic. A Vorin soldier grabbed her and laughed, saying something in his growling language. The translator picked it up. Fresh meat. Jiwan's rifle was up before she thought about it. The shot was clean, catching the Vorin in the center of mass. The soldier dropped, his rifle clattering on the ground. "So much for quiet," one of her team muttered. Then we go loud. "Move, move, move." The humans hit the base like a storm. They used the terrain, the buildings, everything around them. The Vorin were stronger and tougher, but they fought like they were still hunting prey. They stood in the open, relying on their natural armor and shields. They never expected the prey to use cover, to flank, to coordinate. Humans had been hunting and fighting for hundreds of thousands of years. Every tactic was instinct. Yoon reached the prisoner compound and started breaking locks. Corvus poured out, terrified and confused. "Run!" she shouted, pointing toward the forest. "Go, go!" A Vorin soldier charged at her and she shot him 3 times before he fell. Her hands were shaking. She had taken an oath to do no harm, and here she was killing. But when she looked at the Corvus children running to freedom, she knew she would do it again. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, 17 Vorin soldiers were dead, and 300 Corvus were free. The humans had taken 2 casualties, both non-fatal. Jiwan stood among the bodies and felt sick. War was supposed to be noble, heroic. This was just ugly and necessary. But the Corvus survivors looked at the humans with something new in their eyes. Hope. Back on the Seongnyeom, Captain Taimin received reports of the ground operation. He also received something else, a message from War Master Drivok. "Human Captain," the message began, "I am War Master Drivok of the Vorin Dominion. You have killed my soldiers. You have destroyed my ships. This is unexpected. I wish to understand what you are before I crush you." Taimin recorded his reply carefully. "War Master Drivok, I am Captain Taimin of Earth. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. We survived by learning to fight. Now we use that strength to protect others. You wanted to understand what we are? We're the ones who answer when someone calls for help. We're the ones who stand between predators and prey. We're Deathworlders, and we're not leaving." He sent the message and waited. The war had begun. The Corvus system was beautiful and broken. The Seongnyeom dropped out of jump space on the edge of the system, and the first thing Captain Taimin saw were the bodies. Hundreds of them, floating among the wreckage of orbital stations. The Corvus had built their habitats with windows facing the stars, delicate structures of crystal and metal that reflected the purple light of their sun. Now those stations were shattered ruins, bleeding atmosphere and corpses into the void. "Oh God," Dr. Hana whispered. She had spent the journey learning everything she could about the Corvus. Their art, their music, their philosophy. They were pacifists by nature, their entire culture built on cooperation and kindness. They had never imagined that species like the Vorin existed. Commander Jiwan worked her console with grim efficiency. "I'm picking up active Vorin signatures. 3 destroyer-class vessels in orbit around the main planet. Multiple smaller craft conducting surface operations. Captain, they're still hunting them." Taimin felt rage burn in his chest, but he forced it down. Anger made soldiers stupid. "Take us in slow. Use the debris field for cover. I want to know what we're dealing with before they know we're here." The Seongnyeom crept through the graveyard of Corvus civilization. Hana intercepted Vorin communications and ran them through the translation matrix. What she heard made her sick. Harvest Group 7 reports 300 units captured. Processing for labor assignment. Sector 9 cleared. All biological resources secured. Resistance in the southern continent has been eliminated. Beginning collection operations. They were not soldiers talking about an enemy. They were hunters discussing prey. The Vorin saw the Corvus as animals, resources to be gathered and used. Kyung, monitoring the Vorin fleet movements, shook his head in disbelief. They're not even defending their positions properly. No patrol patterns, no sensor sweeps. They think they're alone here. They've never fought anyone who could fight back, Taemin realized. To them, this is just a harvest operation, not a war. Then let's teach them the difference, Jiwon said coldly. But first, they needed to find survivors. Hana picked up a weak signal from the planet's surface deep underground. It was not a distress call, just scattered communications in the Corvus language. People hiding, trying to stay alive. Taemin made his decision. Jiwon, take a shuttle down with the security team. Find those survivors. Kyung, prep your fighters for a strike on that supply depot. He pointed to a Vorin facility on one of the planet's moons. We hit them fast and hard. Show them they're not safe anymore. The operation launched an hour later. Commander Jiwon's shuttle landed in a canyon network where Corvus survivors had taken refuge. When the ramp lowered and humans stepped out in their combat armor, the aliens recoiled in terror. The Corvus were beautiful in their own way. Tall and slender, with 4 arms and large eyes that could see across more of the spectrum than humans. Their skin had patterns that shifted colors with their emotions. Right now, those patterns showed only fear. An elderly Corvus stepped forward slowly. The translation device Jiwon carried picked up his words. Are you the Vorin? No, Jiwon said gently. We're human. From Earth. We heard your call. We came to help. The elder stared at her for a long moment. His pattern shifted from fear to confusion to something that might have been hope. You came, but you are predators. I can see it in your eyes. Forward-facing like the Vorin. You are hunters. Jiwon removed her helmet so he could see her face clearly. Yes, we are predators. But we choose what we hunt. And right now we're hunting the things that are hunting you. The elder's name was Saleth. He had been a teacher before the Vorin came, educating young Corvus about the wonders of the universe. Now he led a few thousand survivors in these caves, hiding from the monsters that had destroyed his world. We have no weapons, Saleth said sadly. No armies. We never needed them. Our world was peaceful. We thought all civilizations would be like us. They're not, Jiwon said. But some of us will fight for those who can't. She showed him video footage from Earth, clips of human history, the wars and struggles and endless fight for survival. She showed him predators like lions and tigers that humans had faced. She showed him the natural disasters, the diseases, the million ways Earth had tried to kill its children. We come from a death world, she explained. A planet that made us strong because we had to be. Every day was a battle just to survive. But we did survive, and we learned to fight back. The Corvus watching the videos were horrified and fascinated. They could not comprehend the violence of Earth's history, but slowly they began to understand that these humans might be their only chance. Tell us where the Vorin are, Jiwon said. Every position you know. We'll handle the rest. While Jiwon gathered intelligence, Lieutenant Kyung led Reaper Wing against the supply depot. 6 human fighters screamed through space, small and fast compared to the lumbering Vorin vessels. The depot was barely defended. The Vorin had never needed serious defenses before. They learned. Kyung's fighters struck like hawks hitting pigeons. Human missiles designed for clearing asteroid debris worked just fine on alien architecture. The depot exploded in a beautiful, terrible flower of light. Foreign soldiers barely had time to reach their ships before the fighters came around for a second pass. Reaper 2 splashed 1 bogey. Reaper 5, I've got 3 on my tail breaking left. Reaper lead, I see them. Coming around. Stay with me, 5. The Vorin pilots tried to engage, but they had never fought an enemy that moved like this. Human pilots used instinct and creativity, flying patterns that no computer would recommend. The Vorin relied on formation and firepower. It was not enough. When the smoke cleared, the depot was gone and 4 Vorin ships were drifting hulks. Kyung brought his squadron home without a single loss. The Vorin Dominion noticed. War Master Dryvok sat in his command ship and watched the recordings of the attack. He was a massive creature, reptilian and powerful, his species having evolved as apex predators on their own world. The Vorin had conquered 17 species through superior strength and ruthless efficiency. No one had ever struck back like this. What are these humans? He demanded. His intelligence officer pulled up what little data they had. Unknown species. Small, weak-looking. but their tactics are being unusual. Aggressive, unpredictable. Where do they come from? Tracking their jump signature now, War Master. Their home system is... Oh. What? The intelligence officer's scales paled. War Master, their planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. High gravity, extreme weather patterns, aggressive fauna, high disease pressure. They should not have evolved intelligence. Nothing survives worlds like that long enough to build civilizations. Drivok leaned forward. But they did. Yes, War Master. They did. For the first time in his military career, War Master Drivok felt something he had not experienced since he was a hatchling. Uncertainty. The Vorin dominated because they were the strongest, the most ruthless. But these humans came from a world that made the Vorin homeworld look like paradise. What kind of species evolved on a planet trying to kill them every single day? Send a destroyer, Drivok ordered. I want these humans eliminated. Show them what happens when prey tries to become predator. The Vorin destroyer launched toward the Seongnyeom's position. It was 3 times the size of the human ship, armed with enough firepower to crack a moon. The Vorin captain was confident this would be quick. On the Seongnyeom's bridge, alarms screamed. The destroyer was coming. Captain Taemin smiled. It was not a kind smile. Finally, he said, let's show them what Deathworlders can do. The signal came on a Tuesday morning, slicing through the static of deep space like a scream in the dark. Captain Taemin was drinking his 3rd coffee of the day when the alert flashed across every screen in the command center. The exploration vessel Seongnyeom had been charting asteroids near the outer colonies for 6 months. Boring work that paid well. His crew of 200 was restless, hungry for something more than scanning rocks and filing reports. The communications officer looked up from her station, her face pale. Captain, you need to hear this. Taemin set down his cup and walked to the console. The sound that filled the bridge made his blood run cold. It was not human, that much was clear. The voice was soft, musical, but underneath the melody was pure terror. The words came through the translation software in broken fragments. Please, anyone. They are killing us. We have no weapons. Please help. Then the message looped. Again and again. The same desperate plea, broadcast on every frequency humanity had ever monitored. Dr. Hannah, the ship's xenolinguist, rushed onto the bridge, still in her sleep clothes. Her hands shook as she pulled up the signal data. This has been broadcasting for 17 days, she said quietly. The source is 3 jump points away. The language structure is completely alien, but the translation matrix is 94% confident in the meaning. Commander Ji-won, the second in command, studied the data with her engineer's eyes. Who are they? Who's attacking them? Hannah worked frantically, her fingers dancing across multiple screens. The species calls themselves Corvus. They're being attacked by something called the Vorin Dominion. I'm pulling up more data now. Over the next hour, the picture became clear and horrifying. The Corvus were a peaceful species, herbivores who had reached the stars through cooperation and science. They had no military, no weapons beyond basic tools. Their distress call had been sent automatically when their orbital stations came under attack. The Vorin were something else entirely, a militaristic empire that had conquered dozens of worlds. They saw weaker species as resources to be harvested. Taemin read the reports with growing anger. The Vorin were enslaving the Corvus, using them as labor and food. The few fragmented videos that came through the signal showed horrors he could barely process. Peaceful aliens being hunted through their own cities. Children torn from their families. Entire settlements burned to ash. We need to report this to Earth, Ji-won said. She was practical, always thinking 3 steps ahead. This is first contact. This is bigger than us, Taemin nodded. Send everything to the United Defense Council. Priority Alpha. The response took 3 days. 3 days while the signal kept playing. The same desperate cry for help echoing across the void. When the reply finally came, it was not what Taemin wanted to hear. Negative on intervention, the message read. First contact protocols require diplomatic assessment. Military engagement with unknown alien species is prohibited. Return to Earth immediately for debriefing. The bridge went silent. Taemin read the message twice, then a 3rd time. His jaw tightened. They want us to leave them to die, he said quietly. Sir, we have to follow orders, Ji-won began. But her heart was not in the words. Taemin looked at his crew. He saw anger, sadness, and determination in their eyes. These were good people. People who had signed up to explore the stars and make humanity proud. He thought about his own past, growing up in the Mars colonies during the rebellion. He remembered what it felt like to be helpless, to need someone to stand up when everyone else looked away. How long would it take to reach the Corvus system? He asked. Hana checked her console. With our jump drive, maybe 16 hours. And our weapons. Jiwan frowned. We're an exploration vessel, sir. We have point defense guns, some missiles for clearing debris. Nothing meant for real combat. But we have weapons, yes, sir. We have weapons. Taman stood and walked to the forward viewport. Out there in the black, aliens were dying. Real living beings who had built cities and art and families. They were being slaughtered because they had never learned to fight, because their world had been kind enough that they never needed to. Earth had not been kind. Earth had tried to kill humanity every single day since the species crawled out of the oceans. Predators, diseases, disasters, and eventually each other. Humans had learned to fight because they had no choice. They carried that violence in their DNA, a gift from a world that showed no mercy. Maybe it was time to use that gift for something good. Send a message to Earth, Taman said. Tell them we're experiencing engine trouble and cannot comply with the recall order. Then plot a course for the Corvus system. Maximum speed, Captain, Jiwan said carefully. This is mutiny. They'll court-martial you. Your career will be over. I know. Taman turned to face his crew. Anyone who wants to leave can take the shuttle back to the colony. I won't stop you. I won't even blame you. But I'm going. Those people asked for help. Someone has to answer. Nobody moved toward the shuttle bay. Lieutenant Kayung, the cocky young pilot who led their fighter squadron, grinned. About time we did something interesting, sir. Medic Yun, who had treated miners and colonists for years, nodded firmly. We didn't come to the stars to be cowards. One by one, the crew voiced their agreement. Even Jiwan, practical and cautious, finally smiled. Fine, but if we're doing this, we do it smart. Hana, I need everything you can learn about both species. Kyung, get the fighters ready. Everyone else, we're refitting this ship for combat. We have 16 hours to turn an exploration vessel into a warship. The Seongnyeom jumped into the black, racing toward a war that humanity never asked for but could not ignore. In the command center, the Corvus distress call kept playing its loop, but now it had an answer. The Deathworlders were coming. Taman stood at his station and pulled up Earth's history files. He selected videos of human warfare, human survival, human determination. He packaged them into a message and attached it to a reply broadcast. Hold on, he transmitted toward the Corvus system. We heard you. We're coming, and we're bringing hell with us. The message shot into the void at light speed. Behind it, a ship full of humans prepared for the unknown. They checked weapons they barely knew how to use. They ran combat drills for scenarios they could only imagine. They were scared, but they were also determined. Earth had made them survivors. Today they would use that strength to protect someone else. The Deathworlders had answered the call. The Corvus system became the center of the galaxy's attention overnight. News of humanity's intervention spread through the interstellar community like wildfire, carried by traitors and diplomats who could barely believe what they were hearing. A new species had emerged from an unknown death world, fought a major empire and won. High Sovereign Krathis sat in his throne room on the Voran homeworld and listened to War Master Drivok's report. The War Master stood at attention despite his wounds, describing the humans in detail. Their tactics, their technology, their strange psychology that valued cooperation over individual glory. They should not exist, Krathis said quietly. The High Sovereign was old, ancient by Voran standards, and he had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. A species from a Class 12 death world should never have survived long enough to build starships. The galaxy itself should have killed them. It tried, Sovereign, Drivok replied. It failed, and now they are here and they are dangerous. Dangerous. Krathis considered the word, or useful. Within days, representatives from 12 different alien species arrived in the Corvus system, all wanting to meet the humans. The Galactic Council, a loose federation of civilized species, demanded an explanation for humanity's military actions. Earth's newly appointed ambassador Doyen met them in a hastily constructed diplomatic station. The council chamber was designed for species far different from humans. The seats were wrong sizes, the atmosphere was adjusted for different biologies, and the lighting spectrum hurt human eyes. But Doyen sat calmly as alien diplomats circled him like sharks. You have violated every protocol of first contact, the Pelthian representative hissed. The Pelthians were an insectoid species, logical and bureaucratic. You engaged in warfare before establishing diplomatic relations. You interfered in the internal affairs of the Voran Dominion. Internal affairs? Doyen kept his voice level. They were committing genocide. That is a matter of perspective, a Chimari delegate said. The Chimari were energy beings, barely physical. The Voran have their own cultural practices. Who are you to judge? Doyen stood and the chamber fell silent. He activated a holographic display showing footage from the Corvus system. Bodies floating in space, cities burning, children being dragged from their families. This is genocide, Doyen said quietly. Not cultural practice. Not internal affairs. This is the systematic destruction of an entire species, and if your council sees no problem with it, then your council is worthless. The chamber erupted in outrage. Several delegates demanded humanity be censured, possibly quarantined to their own system. But others, a smaller group, remained silent and thoughtful. The Corvus delegate, Elder Silith himself, rose slowly. The humans saved us. When we called for help, when we screamed into the void, every species in this council heard us, and every species did nothing. Only Earth answered. Because they do not understand the complexity of galactic politics, the Pelthian insisted. Or because they understand something simpler, Silith replied. Right and wrong, strong and weak, protector and predator. The humans are predators, yes. I see it in their eyes, in their movements. But they are predators who chose to hunt other predators instead of us. For that, we owe them everything. The vote was close. By a margin of 7-5, the Galactic Council granted humanity provisional membership. But it came with restrictions. Human military expansion would be monitored, human colony growth would be limited, and humanity would be on probation for 50 standard years. Admiral Bora, listening from the Indomitable, shook her head. They're scared of us, can you blame them? Captain Taemin had been invited to the flagship for debriefing. His ship, the Songnyeom, was being repaired, but the damage ran deeper than hull plating. We showed up and started a war. From their perspective, we're dangerous, unpredictable newcomers. From our perspective, we saved innocent people. Both can be true. The political situation remained tense, but something unexpected happened. High Sovereign Krathis requested a meeting with human leadership. Not through formal channels, not with the Galactic Council present. A private discussion between two predator species. Admiral Bora met him on a neutral station, with Captain Taemin and Ambassador Doyen flanking her. Krathis arrived with only War Master Dryvok, a show of respect in Varin culture. The High Sovereign was even larger than Dryvok, his scales marked with the scars of 1,000 battles. But his eyes were sharp, intelligent, calculating. This was not a simple warlord. This was a leader who had guided an empire for centuries. Humans, Krathis said, his voice like grinding stone. You have disrupted the balance of power in this galaxy. The balance was already broken, Bora replied. You were slaughtering peaceful species. Yes, we were. Because we are predators and they are prey. This is the natural order. Natural order? Taemin stepped forward. We're predators too. We come from a world full of things that wanted to eat us, but we learned something you apparently never did. The strongest predators don't hunt the weak. They protect their territory, raise their young, and only fight when necessary. Krathis studied Taemin for a long moment. You defeated War Master Dryvok. 3 of you against 1 of him. Is that your definition of honor? We don't care about honor, Taemin said bluntly. We care about winning, and protecting, and surviving. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford it. To everyone's surprise, Krathis laughed. I like you, human. You remind me of young Voran before we became civilized and soft. Very well, I propose an accord. The proposal was radical. The Voran Dominion would cease its expansion and genocide campaigns. In exchange, humanity would help them face a mutual threat. The Skra, a hive-minded species that consumed entire planets, strip mining biospheres until nothing remained. The Skra have been growing in power for a century, Krathis explained. They are not conquerors or slavers. They are a plague. The Galactic Council has been too weak to stop them. Perhaps 2 predator species working together could succeed where the Council has failed. It was a devil's bargain. Work with the species that had been exterminating the Corvus in order to fight an even greater threat. Admiral Bora looked at her advisors, then at Captain Taemin. "What do you think?" she asked. Taemin considered carefully. "I think the Vorin are bastards. But I also think they're honest bastards. If Krathis gives his word, he'll keep it. And if the Skrull are as bad as he says, we'll need allies." The first joint human-Vorin operation launched 3 months later. Captain Taemin, now recovered from his injuries, commanded the Shongnyeom alongside War Master Drivok's flagship. The mission was simple: investigate a Skrull incursion in a border system. What they found was worse than anyone expected. The Skrull had already consumed 2 planets, reducing them to barren rocks. Millions of aliens dead, entire ecosystems destroyed. The Skrull ships were organic, living vessels that birthed smaller craft like insects swarming from a hive. "They do not negotiate," Drivok said as they watched the horror unfold. "They do not take prisoners. They only consume." "Then we stop them," Taemin replied. The battle was brutal. Skrull tactics were simple but effective, overwhelmed through numbers. But they had never faced human-Vorin cooperation. The Vorin provided raw firepower and durability. The humans provided tactics and adaptability. Together they cleared the system. After the battle, Taemin and Drivok stood on the observation deck of the Seongnyom, looking at the dead planets below. "Your species is strange," Drivok said. "You fight like demons, but you also weep for your enemies. I have seen your medics treating Vorin wounded, even after we tried to exterminate the Quarvis." "That's what makes us human," Taemin replied. "We can be violent when we need to be, but we choose when and why. We're not slaves to our nature." "Perhaps," Drivok said thoughtfully. "Or perhaps you are simply predators who have learned to pretend otherwise." "Maybe. Does it matter as long as we're protecting people?" The War Master had no answer to that. Back on Earth, the mood was conflicted. Humanity had saved an alien species, made contact with a galactic community, and proven they could fight among the stars. But the cost had been high. Over 300 humans had died in the Quarvis system. The Seongnyom's crew had been awarded medals and honors, but they all carried scars. Captain Taemin retired from active service and became the first director of the Xeno Defense Academy, training the next generation of human officers. Commander Ji-won took command of the rebuilt Seongnyom, now flagship of humanity's protection fleet. Lieutenant Kyung became a legend, his tactics studied in military academies across human space. Dr. Hana stayed with the Quarvis, helping them rebuild their civilization. She and Elder Sileth published the first comprehensive guide to human-Quarvis relations, a document that became required reading for both species. Medic Yoon returned to Earth and opened a hospital specializing in alien biology, becoming the galaxy's first true xenodoctor. 1 year after the distress call, a memorial was built in orbit around Quarvos Prime. It listed every human who had died protecting the Quarvis, and every Quarvis who had perished in the genocide. At the dedication ceremony, Elder Silith spoke through tears. "We called into the darkness never expecting an answer, and the Deathworlders came. They brought violence, yes, but also hope. They showed us that strength can be used to protect, not just destroy.